So Staticom, which was direct radio voice, the changes we made were A, we removed the radio. Why? Any skeptic, any scientist is going to say to you, you're using a device that brings in communication, speech, and you're claiming you're getting speech from the other side. How do you determine reception from deception? Great point. I mean, that made total sense.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey everyone.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Nicole.
We are Generation X Paranormal. So we've got yet another wonderful show.
Always.
I didn't say fantastic, and I didn't say...
Fantastic's my word.
Oh, that's right.
That's what I use.
Yeah, at least I'm not saying 30,000 foot view.
That's true. That's for you, Mark.
Yeah. That's a shout out for Mark and Jim and Tina and everybody else who gave me a hard time at Paracon. Yes, guys, I know I say 30,000 foot view a lot. It is what it is. I can't help it. I've said flyover now a little bit. Maybe that makes it better. I don't know.
Yeah. No, not really.
All right. Fair enough. But listen, we've got a great show. We got Tony Rathman on, and he's got a very interesting way of talking to, well, really just recording paranormal events. So tell us a little something about Tony.
So Tony Rathman is the founder and lead investigator of Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations, located in Phoenix, Arizona, and has spent the last 15 years fascinated with instrumental transcommunication, research, and building spirit boxes to discovering the truths about spirits, entities, and life after death. Tony specializes in spirit communication through both EVP and ITC, also known as instrumental transcommunication, and today focuses on the groundbreaking technology called Staticom, derived from the European methodology of ITC known as direct radio voice.
Nice. I like the way he says Staticom.
The way I say?
Yeah, you went Staticom. It's like he should hire you for like an ad or something.
I'm available.
All right, let's talk to Tony.
Okay.
Well, hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. Looking forward to this conversation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. No, we're excited. Welcome to Generation X Paranormal. We definitely been excited to talk to you because I think that anybody who does any kind of paranormal research typically knows that you kind of have your regular analog devices and you take with you, and, you know, for lesser or better, some work, some don't, some are good, some are bad. And then we've kind of ushered into the new age of ITC. And we've ushered into, you know, people can bring phones with them and they have different apps, you know, like obviously the big one of being Ghost Tube and things like that. And I know that with this particular vertical in our little world can get a little bit dicey, and some people have certain feelings for it, some people don't. But hopefully we can kind of dispel a lot of that and just kind of get to the meat and potatoes of what you got going on. But kind of before we jump into that, you mind giving our audience a little bit of a kind of a background from you and kind of what got you to this point?
Sure. Well, we've been now involved in paranormal investigation and ITC research for 15 years. Back in 2010, my father was a physics professor, and I didn't believe any of this. There was no talk about spirits, ghosts. I mean, I would ask a simple question like, Dad, why is the sky blue? And he'd say, well, there's water vapor in the air. When it gets hit by the sunlight, blue's the most reflective color. That color reflects out onto the atmosphere and makes the sky look blue. So everything to me growing up was scientific answers, which are correct. I mean, don't get me wrong, science holds a very astute place in the environment, and scientists determine future behavior based on certain situations, but it doesn't explain what something is. So when we started, my wife is the one who had the interest. I did not. And the TV shows just started to come out, and she watched every single one of them. And every time she was watching, she's like, come on, come sit with me. You got to see this. You're going to love it. I would last about 2 minutes and say, nope, this isn't real. None of this exists. This is for TV only. And I'd get up and I'd walk away. Well, then in 2010, it was Valentine's Day weekend, and normally her and I would go to a hotel. We're in Arizona, so even in February, you can swim. We'd have drinks, have a great weekend. And she said, I want to do something different. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh my God, you're kidding me. But I had two choices. I could take her, or I could have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So I didn't want that. So I did some research online, found a hotel in downtown Phoenix that had a reputation, supposedly, in my mind anyway, that was haunted. So I thought, okay, I booked it for the weekend. I thought, I'm done. And then she was watching a show a couple days before, and I noticed they had all these gadgets, and I'm like, she's going to need this stuff. So I went out, I bought her a night vision camera, a digital recorder, and an EMF meter. I figured that'll get her through the weekend, because I figured after we were done, this stuff would sit in the closet for a year or two until we threw it away.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so we went. She had a great time. I played along like I was having fun too. I was asking questions for the digital recorder. I was also taking pictures if she was videotaping. So I played along the best I could. She had fun. That was all I care about.
Yeah.
When we got home, though, she started going through everything: the photos, the video, the digital recording. She was calling me over every 2 to 3 minutes. Whose voice is this? You and I were the only one up at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. There were only 2 other guests in the entire 312-room hotel, so nobody was around. And we were in parts of the hotel we probably weren't even supposed to be, so nobody was there. Yet there were vocal responses on the recorder with timing and relevance to the questions that we asked. So I was shocked. Then we started noticing things in the pictures that weren't there when we took it, like glowing light effects and some shadowy looking things. And then the ultimate one, on our very first investigation ever, she caught an apparition on video which stood still at first, then it walked past a wall and disappeared right on.
Wow.
Got the Holy Grail right out the gate.
Right. I mean, so being a total skeptic, I spent the last month or two trying to figure out what's the reasonable explanation for this.
Right.
Couldn't find one. So finally I said to her, let's go back. Maybe there was a vent when we were doing the digital recording where voices were coming through. Maybe there was a light shining through some window we didn't notice outside, and it was causing reflection on the camera lens. And I don't know what to say about the woman that was on the video, but I said, let's go take a look. So we went back like a week later and went to the same places we went the first time, checked out everything. No windows with light shining through, no vents that we could have any vocals coming through. And then we came back, she started reviewing again, we had even more. Wow. So I'm like, okay, something's going on. So then we started investigating. I think we investigated that particular hotel over 50 times because we were there 2-3 times a week.
Jeez.
just to see what we could catch. And then, of course, we branched out. We branched out to historic places, haunted locations. Then we covered all of Arizona. Then we moved on to Nevada, New Mexico, California, and just kept spreading out. Then we started moving across the country. We've been from East Coast to West Coast to just about every location in between. Then we took it overseas. We've investigated in Japan. We've investigated in the Philippines. And we've got other places on our list. But the most incredible thing for us was a vocal. Because from it, and I don't care what other gadget you have, and we have them all, we have closets packed with cases full of equipment.
We know the feeling.
Yeah, but you could never beat a vocal response because A, you didn't know it was coming. 2, I could tell if it was male or female. I could tell if it was an adult or a child. I could tell their emotional state. Were they happy? Were they upset? Were they angry? Were they fearful? I could tell what language they were speaking. I could tell if they carried an accent, a territorial dialect, or even speaking a different language, all before I even heard the answer that they gave. And that, to me, was just a bucket full of information that I couldn't get from some device blinking a light or playing music or, it was unmatchable. Right. So our focus in the first year of investigating focused on EVP and voices. From there, we moved to ITC. And I have an electronics background. I used to fix radios and televisions when I was like 16. So I said, I'm going to take this thing apart. Let's see how this thing functions. So I did. Well, then for the next 12 years, we built them. So in 12 years, we built 14 different spirit boxes, all improving over the last one built. The only thing we couldn't improve was the length of the communication. We took out the white noise so that it was still there for them to respond with, but you didn't hear it. So you'd only hear the voice. Well, then we got introduced from some former partners to a method called direct radio voice. Now, spirit boxes, as you know, use radio, and it scans forward or reverse based on a speed selection, how fast you want it to go or how slow you want it to go. Right. But it uses radio. And the thought process behind it was that spirits would take the fragments of audio and rearrange them to make their own sentences. I can tell you for a fact that does not happen. First of all, they'd have to have every sound they needed available to them at that split second. They would have to rearrange at the speed of light in the correct order to create a sentence. And in fact, what our research showed us was that the audio from radio, they weren't using it, and in fact, it stopped the communication. They weren't using radio fragments, they were using white noise. So that's what limits your response when using a spirit box. Do they work? They do work. We built them for 12 years. But that's the limitation in the amount of communication you can get. So Staticom, which was direct radio voice, the changes we made were A, we removed the radio. Why? Any skeptic, any scientist is going to say to you, you're using a device that brings in communication, speech, and you're claiming you're getting speech from the other side. How do you determine reception from deception? Great point. I mean, that made total sense, and we knew that before, but excellent point. So we said the radio is going to be the first thing that has to go. So we did a bunch of tests. Our former partners were doing a test in a zinc mine, and everybody who had spirit boxes got nothing because a zinc mine 30 feet underground is like a natural Faraday cage, and radio waves can't penetrate. So out of all the people that were there, they're the only people that still got voices. So in hearing that from them, I went out and I tested. Well, I was actually doing some tests for another gentleman who was claiming to have gotten voices from running water. And yeah, there were some voices in there.
Really?
Yep. because running water is very similar to white noise.
Okay.
So then
Yeah.
I went out and started doing some tests. I recorded running water, fans, air conditioners. I taped mics to my car when I drove around town to get the white noise sound.
Yeah.
Sure
Yeah.
enough, I could pull voices. But what I couldn't do was pull them consistently because the white noise had fluctuations in it. It would be stronger at points, weaker in other points. And so what we did was, I said, let's try a white noise generator. White noise generator is a small piece of electronic equipment. It produces every sound the human ear can hear from 20 hertz to 20 hertz at a spectral frequency of 1, meaning it's all even. So then we tried that. Sure enough, voices came flying in, speech. We could ask questions, they would answer, the radio was gone. So then the next step we did was to slow down live white noise in real time. So it slowed down 50%. The reason we do that is because we got messages that came in so fast that it sounded like a syllable. When we slowed it down 50%, it was a full, complete sentence sounding just like I'm talking now.
Wow.
So Staticom uses only broadband white noise. It is a closed system. There are no mics. There are no word banks. There are no AI. Nothing to produce vocals. It cannot accept radio, satellite, walkie-talkies, baby monitors, nothing. It's only filtered white noise. And then we added filtration into the system that will clean it up, denoise it, and then cut the white noise out at the end, leaving only the vocal left. So the reason that occurs is because white noise is used in a physics principle called stochastic resonance. And what that process does is that it takes a signal, a noise signal, or a hearing subject matter, and makes an undetectable signal both to human senses and to sensors, and makes it detectable. So when we added the white noise level is constant, stays right here. When the speech comes in, it overlaps a handful of those frequencies in white noise, because it's hundreds of thousands of frequencies in broadband white noise. Mm-hmm. What that does then is it elevates the voice, sort of like the difference between if you had a single bee flying a foot from your head or the whole hive. If you had the whole hive, that same sound, same frequency of the buzzing gets elevated.
Right.
So then the voice comes up, the white noise stays at its base level, then we cut the base level out, leaving only the voice.
Okay, that makes sense.
So with white noise, and I know that there's different types of noise. There's a brown noise. There's all kinds of different
There's
spectrum.
pink noise, brown noise, white noise, and there's a couple
Right.
other variations. But every variation beyond white is just a set of sub-frequencies of white.
Okay, gotcha. As I was going to ask you if you guys had attempted trying the different, but if it's basically a breakdown of white as it is, then
Yeah.
Correct.
it makes
It's octaves within the full broadband spectrum of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess my initial question is, now obviously you've had many, many years of doing this, and it always takes an innovation to kind of disrupt everything. And what is it that, first of all, what sent you down that road? Did you just look at something and go, okay, kind of like with the radio? And I agree, by the way. We use a lot of it. Now, we have an SB7. We have all these other different things. And we have a honeytone that cuts down a lot of that, the background. And you're all familiar with this. And yes, I agree. The stuff that we get never is from the radio. You never hear any. In fact, the radio just ends up being a problem because we have been in conversation. As a matter of fact, we just came from an investigation roughly about 2-3 weeks. Well, it may have been longer than that now.
Been over a month, yeah.
And we were having a great conversation. The vocal tone was the same. You could tell it was the same person every single time. There was no fluctuation. And then, of course, you get stepped on with the radio, and you're just like, we're just right in this thing. So, no,
Right.
You're right. It's quite amazing. But was there a tipping point that said, okay, let's throw all that aside and jump into this closed system?
Yeah, well, the jumping point from the beginning was to go back through history and look at what other pioneers had done. What was effective for them? What was not effective, like Spiritcom. I mean, today most people realize that was probably faked. But one of the person who developed or realized that they could get voices from a radio sitting on a vacant frequency, which is what direct radio voice does. So you're only taking the white noise because it's between, and it doesn't move. It sits stationary. Was named Frederick Jurgensen. He was actually a painter, but when he realized he could do this, he spent the rest of his life trying to teach other people. He taught Konstantin Rathman, and then Rathman taught a gentleman named Marcello Bacci. And Marcello Bacci used direct radio for about 35, 40 years. And he was the only one who was brought in by scientists and tested in a lab. And his voices still came through, and the scientists removed the vacuum tubes out of the radio one by one to see if they could still get voices. So they took out the first one, Marcello still got voices. They took out the second one, he still got voices. Then the scientist said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to pull the third one. If you still get voices, I'll eat that. So he pulled it. Marcello still got voices. And then he said to the scientist, don't eat that, that's glass. No good.
Yeah, that's a problem.
The only thing they could remove to keep the voices from coming through was Marcello himself. So that also shows the connection that about 40% of it is the electronics. The other 60 is the person operating it. That connection has to be there, because we've had people try to replicate it, and they're like, I did this for like 3 hours. I got nothing. Well, guess what? It took us like a year to get our first full sentence vocal. If you're going to give up in a couple of hours, this method's not for you. It takes patience, it takes dedication, and it takes a little bit of savviness, because it's not like a spirit box that there's a on switch and you're good to go. It's a method, so you're filtering sound, you're adjusting frequencies, so it's a little more complicated.
Right. And it's true, because even given the simplicity of an SB7 box, or even just, I mean, we will use, so kind of what we do with our investigations is we'll run ITC, but I always run something analog with it, because I think that they can play off each other, and I've gotten some evidence that we would have never gotten had we not run both the analog and the ITC at the same time. But I think the problem is people will use that ITC as a crutch and think that, okay, well, they'll look at that and go, okay, they get these certain words that come through, and then there's this word salad. But I think that I love the direction that's taking, because I am probably one of the more skeptic between the two of us. And when we first started playing with ITC, and honestly, we really started playing with I think we had Ryan O'Neill on. We talked a little bit about it with him, and I think that he kind of got me going down the path a little bit of using it. And I like the idea, because whether we all believe in that same camp of this is how entities talk, they're electrical signals, they're using impulse, or using, EM, all these different things, then we have to accept the fact that these computers and things that we use are susceptible to that. They're going to record that. That is its whole point. It's ones and zeros. That's all it is.
Well, but, it's energy, frequency, and vibration.
Right.
Because, we had to look at, there are so many things that we tried to do. One was not fight science. When we determined, once we got voices responding to us, we didn't want to fight science. We didn't want to fight religion either, because two of the main institutions out there today that people follow, one or the other or both, and they're pretty set fast on what's being told. But the concern for us was that there were some few things that were falling outside of both, and we had to determine for ourselves, okay, what's really happening here? How do we determine what's going on? And without, with keeping the straightest line of information from point A to point B without bending it all over the place, saying, well, if this happens, spirits just know how to do that. We didn't want any of that. We wanted no axioms. No, if you put two mirrors together, you get a portal. Okay, That's been passed down for I don't know how long. Is there any proof to support it? No. Nothing. Has anyone ever thrown a quarter through one mirror and have it come out the other? No. If they do, and that can be shown, okay, that changes things. But right now, there is no bit of evidence at all to support putting two mirrors together produces a portal.
Right.
And I don't even want to get into the whole portal thing, but anyway, the whole goal here was to find out. We knew from 12 years of using spirit boxes that we can get communication that's not coming from radio. Now the question is, can we prove direct radio voice still works today? We did that. Can we get rid of the radio? Can we get rid of every piece of low-hanging fruit that somebody can dismiss it? We did that. Now I can ask a question without a mic, without broadcasting my voice in any way, shape, or form, as I'm talking in my house right now without the mics, and have a response come back with timing and relevance to the question I asked in full, complete sentences.
It's amazing. That's awesome.
Wow.
Kind of leads us into, we know you sent us some clips and they're
amazing. Yeah.
But we're definitely going to want to kind of break it down. So kind of in this first one, if you want to kind of just tee it off, and we'll have you tee off these clips because I certainly wasn't there, but man, there's something to behold.
It's so clear.
Yeah, it is wild. So yeah, if you can kind of lead us into this first one.
So the first one you're about to play was still direct radio voice. So this was a radio, and we were running it, and it's really funny, but, my wife said, Marcello, meaning Marcello Bacci, this is your method. Now, actually, it was Frederick Jurgenson's, but I knew what she meant. And she said, it's working. Can you communicate with us? And you can hear the spirit say, Bacci's coming. Now, is it Marcello Bacci? We can never say for sure. We don't know. People ask us all the time, do you know who you're speaking to? The fact of the matter is no, we don't. But anyway, so that's what this clip is about. And if you want to go ahead and play that one, we'll do it now.
Yeah, let's do it right here.
Marcello, can you see us?
Yes.
Thank you. Marcello, you started this method. It's working. Can you please try to communicate with us?
Yeah, I was when we first saw that, it was one of those, we're like, did we actually just hear that? That's pretty impressive.
It's so clear.
Yeah.
When he said, I'd say glad to meet you, that we were blown away.
Yeah,
Now,
and it's
the one thing to know about direct radio voice before we transitioned was in a year of running it, that clip you just played is the clearest response we ever had. Now, we had communication. You can hear what they're saying, sometimes better than others. That one you just played is the clearest response we ever received in the entire year of running direct radio voice.
I mean, it shows. It's pretty breathtaking, actually.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of those ITC things you have to listen to them 2 or 3 times to really understand what they're saying. But these, the first time.
Yeah.
First time.
It is something that you're right. Being a closed system and not having any word bank or anything for them to utilize, it does kind of make you wonder where, because obviously those people who are still in the camp of the word banks, and there's nothing wrong with it, I get it, but this is not, and it doesn't have any geographics too, so wouldn't know where it's at, which can be an argument for some of these ITC things. But yeah, that is just amazing on a closed system.
Yeah, and you know, you're pushing into the boundary then of like phone apps. I mean, there's a reason when you download them it says for entertainment only. There's a reason for that. We wanted to avoid that. Everyone always says to us, "Hey, can you turn this into an app?" Never going to happen. The processing power it takes to do this, we run the highest end computers out there in order to get this to do this, because everything is live. When you do EVP, you do your session, you ask your questions, you shut your recorder off, you take it home, you upload it to your computer, you may amplify it, you may try to get rid of background. We don't have to do anything. Everything is done for us live. So we ask a question, the method handles everything, and all we hear coming out the speaker is the response.
Right.
So that's a huge plus. Plus, like you said, there is no word banks. Everyone says, okay, well, what's in the filtration system? Real easy to answer. Denoising, frequency adjustment, voice extraction, and other filters. But filters that only filter sound. Nothing that creates words, nothing that can speak, nothing that can pull anything off the internet. We do not need any internet active. We don't need anything. So we tried to get a complete break from any of the low-hanging skeptic fruit, and we did accomplish it. So we're super excited.
That's fantastic.
It is, yeah.
Well, I know we got another clip, so we've got some really cool stuff. So,
no kidding.
Yeah, kind of lead us into this next one.
Sure. So the next clip is the upgrade from direct radio voice. Radio's been removed. White noise generator's been replaced with the radio. So this next clip, I asked if they could say my name. I said, "Can you say Tony?" And they said my full name, first and last.
Yeah, yeah, I saw that. That was cool.
And then I got to think for a second. I said, "You know who I am. Can I know who you are?" And they responded 2 sentences, 2 different spirit, consciousness, whatever term you want to refer to it, giving the first and the last name that they had.
Can you say Tony? Did you just say Rathman? Yep. So you know who I am. Can I know who you are? Yes, sir. Thank you. Who am I speaking to?
Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Well, for it to even say it says Anthony, for those who are, if you're listening, I urge you to maybe watch this one on YouTube, because we do both YouTube and audio. But if you're actually listening, maybe take the time to do
Watch
this, because
the video. Yeah.
I mean, it flat out says Anthony, and it's just like, well, how would it know? I mean, of course, if it's intelligent, it would know that Tony is short for Anthony. But again, not a word bank. So
Correct.
Well, that's even more provable.
Yeah, exactly.
That they're intelligent. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, people have asked us before, well, do you get residual? Well, we're only dealing with audio. How would I know? The only way I would know is if it was an answer that completely did not fit the question asked. Like if I said, how many spirits are with me right now? And I heard lasagna. Okay, that
Yeah, right.
could that be residual? Yeah. Do we know that it can't pick up residual? No, we don't. We don't know any of the limitations yet. All we know that everything that we've tried so far has succeeded. Where those boundaries are going to shut down, we're still learning. But
Sure.
the other thing, and I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. It slipped my mind at the moment. I'll think of it again. But
Happens to me all the time. It didn't even take turning 50. It started a lot earlier than that. No, and there's a lot of skepticism behind. Well, first of all, we're in a vertical, and we're in a field that skepticism is just a given. People are always going to question everything, and should, quite frankly.
right.
Yeah.
But I've seen some of the stuff and some of the people that you've worked with, and these are real serious people that take this very seriously, and that's a lot of serious.
I know. I was going to say, serious.
That's how serious they take it.
It is extremely serious. There's no playing around
You got to
here.
stress it.
What has been kind of their feedback? And I know we've got a few more clips or so here, but I'd be interested to hear that, because
Sure.
especially with this last one, with it getting your full name, that's pretty point positive.
Yeah, the toughest challenge is that unless you've seen it in person, because we do live events where we've got 40, 50 people in the room, we let them ask their own questions, get their own responses. But if you only see it through the videos, it's kind of like if 5-year world champion boxer takes on some competitor who has no history whatsoever, and the competitor knocks him out in the first 30 seconds. What's the first thing the audience says? Oh, that's rigged. That was rigged. There's no
Yeah.
way. So
Yeah.
that's what we fight. We fight having it so good that nobody believes it, or the other side of the coin is they're like, oh, that sounds terrible. Who cares what they're doing? So there's that balance it's not just a balance. It takes years to make even small upgrades now. But we just did go from 2 to 3, which I'll talk about those differences when we get to those clips. But, you can't convince. There are people that are going to believe what they believe regardless. If you were trying to discover if Bigfoot was real and you got out of the car, you walked around for 20 minutes, you realized you left something in the car, went back to get it, and realized you lost your keys, and you turn around and Bigfoot's standing there and hands them to you, they still wouldn't believe.
Oh yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So we gave up trying to convince anybody of anything. If you are skeptical, that's not a scientific approach. That's skepticism, and I'm not here to convince you. I'm only here to show you what we've done and what we can get from it, and you can do with it whatever you want. But for people who are interested, find us where we're giving a demonstration. Fly to Halifax, Canada, and we're going to speak about it at this year's Paranormal Symposium. We're going to be at Phenomicon speaking about it this year in Utah. Because it has gained both the interest of the entire paranormal community, but it has also gained interest from the scientific community. This is a one possibility to replicate. We can turn it on, the voices come. It doesn't take anything, even what we consider to be paranormal, because we think the paranormal is just normal. We just don't understand it yet. But every time we flip it on, the voices are there, and I can say, okay, how many spirits are with me? 10, 50, whatever, they'll answer. I can ask them questions, they'll answer. That's repetitive. Science is going to want to take a look at that. But the main thing is that because of the way, we had to reevaluate what we believed reality to be. And today we believe, and we've adopted an idealistic approach, or an analytic idealism, that says that the ontological primitive in life is consciousness. It's there before life begins in universal consciousness. It's in you individually, but still connected to universal consciousness as you go through life, as you learn, as you grow. And that information still transfers back to universal consciousness. And then when you pass away, you return to. Because people always used to say, well, you're using a digital recorder and you're talking to spirits from the 1800s. They're not even going to know what that is. Well, if they're part of universal consciousness, they know what everything is, because people are being born and passing over. Well, I don't even know how many thousands of times a day.
Oh, yeah.
But that information is part of all universal consciousness, which we're part of. So they know what it is.
Yeah, and I make the argument. In fact, I just had a talk. We were over at Missouri Paracon this last weekend, and which, by the way, I don't know when this is coming out. But anyway, we went to Missouri Paracon, and I think one of the arguments that I made is that I think in our field we tend to think that the other side is static, and I think that is such a bad way to look at it, because if we can agree that there's intelligence behind it, which we all agree on, there's no way that other side has some static involvement, unless it's residual. But, if it's just, we just always assume that they're not going to know this sort of thing, or they're not going to be able to comprehend it. Well, if they're intelligent, it's not a static environment.
Like they died in the 1800s and they're set in the 1800s.
Exactly. And now we're just in the 1800s.
If it was static or residual, we would get no answers. Because you have to have intelligence to answer a question. Without intelligence, there's nothing. So it proves to us, it's a stepping stone to prove that consciousness survives death. Not only does it survive death, but you can communicate with it. And that's what we're also hoping to show, as well as other things. I mean, anything that we could research on an answer that we gave. In fact, this is one of the clips. Actually, I think that's 3.0.
Let's tee it up here then. Let's get into that next clip then, because there's actually a part of that, and I don't know if you mentioned it in this clip or where it was, but I'm thinking of a use case for this that's maybe not necessarily paranormal driven, but anyway, let's go ahead and tee up this next clip.
Well, the next clip, we did a lot of scientific questioning when we were running 2.0. 3.0 is so new that I'm still making sure everything's functioning before I can get into the research questions. But if I'm human and I'm not broadcasting my voice through mics, and I speak in my normal tone of voice, okay, that's great. It creates sound waves in the atmosphere, which maybe travel 100, 200 feet before they dissipate. Another human standing within that range has human ears. Their follicles will vibrate. That vibration will go to the liquid center of the brain, which pulsates. That pulsation goes to the brain, telling the brain this is speech, and interprets it. If a spirit entity, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have a human body, and I'm creating vocal sound waves, how do they hear me? So play that clip and you'll hear the answer.
Here we go.
You hear me speak.
Yeah. Let's talk about that one. Unpack that for us if you could.
Sure. Okay, so the first thing they said was, we call it death. Now, to me, that was just their way of simply stating something I would understand. Clearly, they're not dead, or they wouldn't be able to answer. So we call it death, to me, was just an explanation of we've passed over. We're not here anymore. And then another spirit, I believe, because the voice was different.
It was
said energy of the mind. That's the thing. Okay, now let's unpack that.
Yeah, please.
That blew our minds when we heard that.
Ours too when we heard it, because for years we did EVP sessions. And there were times the answer would show up on the recorder before I even got done asking it.
And that's happened.
That explains it. They're not. They don't need my vocals at all. So we tested that too. When we do live sessions, we'd say to the group, if you want to ask a question, but you're too embarrassed to ask in front of an audience, just come up here and think it. Sure enough, they get their answer. So
awesome.
There's
Awesome.
a theory that scientists are starting to evolve and go down called the survival theory of consciousness. And energy of the mind supports that scientific theory of consciousness surviving death.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what's funny is you always think about, there's always that big argument, where does consciousness reside? And everybody's got their own theory. Everybody, this is long since been talked about before we were ever born, and it'll probably still be talked about beyond our lifespan. But when you get into what we do, you tend to lean a little less that your consciousness resides anywhere in this meat
your
and
brain.
potatoes
Yeah.
that I've got going on over here.
Right. And material.
But
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Materialistic
you're fine,
science believes that when the body dies, the brain dies, consciousness dies. Well,
Right.
there's a real simple question then, if that's the case. If I'm sleepy and my body runs on energy and nutrients I get from the food I eat, how come I can't eat a big meal and be wide awake?
Good point.
It's because there's another source that needs to be recharged as well. And that to me
Set,
is
match on
spirit
that.
or consciousness. Otherwise, I eat a gigantic meal. I shouldn't be tired. If my car's out of gas and I put gas in it, it's not tired.
right.
So there's some
Correct.
other entity that is recharging while we sleep. And I believe that to be our consciousness or soul.
For sure. I mean, they even say,
That is a very interesting point.
but it's a very interesting point. Well put. And they even, you look at some of the scientific data that says when we pass away, we weigh less, I think an ounce or two less from death from when we were conscious. So where did that go?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just wild.
Well, and the other
No.
thing we always get is people will say to me, all right, if they're not in human body anymore and they don't have vocal cords, how are they speaking?
I've heard that one many times.
You don't need vocal cords. You need energy, frequency, and vibration. How do you think a guitar string makes noise? You pluck it with your thumb or finger. That's the energy. It then vibrates at a certain frequency, producing sound. Jimi Hendrix used to play his guitar that would sound like words. Using energy, frequency, and vibration. And then the next thing I'll say to people who say that to me is, I said, does your radio have vocal cords? No, it doesn't. But what are you hearing? Full speech, full vocabulary, full sentences, or even singing. How is that occurring? Energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yep.
Well, even, oh, good.
There's actually, and I can't remember the name of the handle. It's on Instagram, but there's a man that takes something into the forest and he attaches it to leaves and stuff of trees and plants and flowers, and he plays like the sounds from the plants.
Correct. Yep. It's called.
So it's the same. You know what I'm talking about?
I thought it had the word mushroom in it, like mushroom audio.
Yeah, it does.
Like
Yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
does.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with it.
Awesome.
It's because every single one, every different plant has a different sound that comes out.
and
yeah.
you get
Yeah, and-
variations of sound, which makes it sound like
Yeah.
tones, almost musical to a point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and being a huge nerd that I am, if you've ever seen on because I've doom scrolled my life away on sometimes on YouTube, but they'll have that one where it's you can hear the noise of the planet. So they'll be, I think it was done by, I can't remember what satellite it was or what they sent out into space, but as they were approaching a given source, like a given planet, I think they would turn on whatever they use to measure sound with, and every single body out there, every planet, every moon has a very distinct sound.
Well, because Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of three things: energy, frequency, and vibration. It is the key to everything. It creates sound. It holds your furniture together by vibrating at such a tight interval that it doesn't come apart. You can sit on it. Now we can get into a whole other layer of philosophy that life is all
Rabbit
mental.
hole.
None of this stuff exists because it doesn't have to exist. Life is completely subjective and completely mental to you and you alone. There is no objective reality because life is subjective to you and you alone. Now you can share experiences with other people, but I can't see through their eyes. I can't hear through their ears. It is subjective only to me. But
100%.
Energy, frequency, and vibration literally are three of the blocks of foundation that what we interact with, it exists. Well, guess what white noise is? Energy, frequency, and vibration. If that's what entities or spirits are, would have to be to create vocals because those are the three components to do it and could easily do it. Throwing it on top of white noise then makes complete sense.
So awesome.
I'm pretty blown away.
I am.
So let's talk about upgrade, because I know you've gone through some variations, and we're at 3.0, right?
Now we're moving to 3.0. So when you heard the responses from 2.0, again, clear. You can't really tell much of a difference between what you heard on DRV, even though that was the only one that clear we got, to what we just played in 2.0. But the frequency, the amount of responses increased in the clarity. So now what we knew we needed to do was make that clarity consistent and there all the time. And that is the difference now to 3.0. That clarity has not gone away yet. We don't plan it to go away, and the communication doesn't stop. If I keep asking questions, they'll keep answering. The other cool part about it, and this went all the way back to DRV, was that you don't even have to ask questions. You can flip it on and just listen. You can listen to them speak. And when we first started it, it was like a spiritual eavesdrop, because once they realized we could hear them, they were like, oh, and then they'd try to whisper. And I'm like, I can still hear you when you whisper.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, there's a clip I say that coming up.
Yeah,
anyway,
I remember that.
The next clip is when I was still programming, making adjustments to get 3.0 to work. And I believe this one's called Initial. And the speech just started coming through. So my wife grabs her phone, turns it on. Now, granted, this is filling the whole house because it's running speakers like a stereo system. That's where the voices come out. She flipped her phone on, recorded, started asking questions, and the answers, they were answering all our questions. So good time to play that one now, the initial one.
Let's do that right now for sure.
Speaker. Who are you trying to find? You're nervous. What?
Right there.
Yeah. Are you trying to send us a message?
Roger. Roger meaning yes or Roger meaning Roger?
Are you talking about Roger Martin?
Yes, Martin.
Yeah, it's again, it's amazing, and you can really tell the difference between. You always say, "Well, what did we change this year? We put a 12 on the box." But when you're making that upgrade between 2 and 3, I can see where things are starting to kind of come together, where you're starting to get that clarity. And you're
not stopping. The fact that we can continue to ask questions, we can further the questions along, meaning that we're not broken by, nothing breaks the conversation unless they go away. The only thing we can't control so far is whether they answer, how many of them are going to answer, and how long they're going to talk for. We have no control over that because they obviously have free will just as I do. I mean, I could say, okay, I'm done and turn it off. They may not want it to, but they can't control that any more than I can control them responding.
for sure.
Right.
But the consistency and the clarity of the voice stays. We don't get a sentence that's super clear and then the next 10 minutes of audio is what? It's
Yes.
consistent now. Now, that took a huge process, huge understanding of so many different things, but we got it. And so we're super psyched about that. And then the next clip that you can play this was the same night. My wife said she wasn't feeling well and she was in pain, so I was worried about that. Well, I got it back up and running, and so I asked. I said, is she getting sick? And if you play that one, you'll be able to hear it.
Yeah, here we go, because I definitely want to talk about this, but here we go.
Spirit, Cherie isn't getting sick, is she? Is Cherie getting sick, Spirit? Yes. What should she take? Who created Staticom?
So the most interesting thing about this was I didn't know what Percodan was. I heard him say it, but I didn't know what it was. So I went to look it up. Believe it or not, for those who don't know, I'm sure a lot of people do, but for those who don't know, Percodan is a prescription strength pain reliever. It's a pain reliever. It's a combination of oxycodone and aspirin, I believe. And high strength potential. But for them to answer that, when she told me I'm in pain, and I said, well, what should she take? Percodan. When I looked it up, I'm like, okay, they're right on target again. Which is the other thing that we've noticed is that when we can research something, like people always asked about the two names that were given, did you research them? I'm working with audio only. I don't know if I spelled them correctly. I don't know if there's some strange consonants used that are silent.
Sure.
So it's really hard to do, and I don't know what
Absolutely.
time frame it was. But about 94 to 95% of the information that we're given that we either don't know or can look up is 100% correct, which is one of the reasons why we think this will be a brilliant method to use for cold cases.
That's exactly
Yes.
what I was
They
thinking.
have they will not give us future information. We know because we've asked for the Powerballs I don't know how many times. They don't
If you
answer.
get it, let me know. I'll split it with you. I don't care.
They don't answer. Even a simple question like, okay, I have to make a decision. Should I take this job or this job? They won't answer. We believe there's something called universal laws that they are not allowed to affect the life we were put here to live, to experience, to learn, and to grow. And if they were to interrupt that, because let's face it, if I won $1 billion in Powerball, I'd be sitting on my own island fishing for the rest of my life and not learning probably anything. And so we believe that there are rules, because we've heard them say, we had a woman one time answering every question I asked. That usually doesn't happen. We heard all these other spirits come in and say to her, stop, you can't tell them that. And then finally they said to us, she wasn't there anymore. And they said to us, we had to remove her.
So they have a police.
Yeah.
Well,
That's just wild.
that's why we call them universal laws, because there are restrictions to what we can know. I mean, think about it. If you were aware that spirits are around you all the time, and I can tell you without a doubt they are, that they can hear you, they can see what you're doing, they know everything. They know what your thought going through your head, what you're planning on doing. How distracting would that be?
It'd
Oh,
be
no kidding.
it would very just. In fact, our home, and it's honestly just a couple of feet away. We have an entity that's very kind, very loving, shows up when we're not feeling well. Now, how in the world do they know that we're not feeling well, or that we're despondent, or if there's something going on in our life? That's typically the only time this entity makes itself aware. How in the world would it know that without being able to do that sort of thing? And maybe that's part of that law set that, I don't know. Who knows what the laws are? But
Well, nobody would take a
like I
shower
said-
again. That's for sure.
But we came up with that term of universal laws. Whether that's an actual fact or not, it's a theory based on what we've experienced.
sure.
But how would you, and this is part of the reason why we're not supposed to know any of this. It's the reason why the human body sight is restricted to visible light only. Hearing is only 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. When both visual spectrums and audio spectrums have on both sides layers and layers of additional that we can't see, hear, or experience. There's a reason for that, because all of this exists out there. We are being blocked from it. So people always say to us, well, what's the line between the living and the non-living? It's the human body. We are literally designed not to, but technology allows us to do things that the human body can't. So
it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
So where are we now with 3.0? I know you mentioned that you're even up to this point, you're making some adjustments to 3.0. Do you feel that this is now, I mean, obviously you'll always want to innovate and change things and everything, but are you getting closer to your full vision of what you wanted to accomplish with it?
The original vision, yes. I think 3.0 is there. This is probably arguably the closest thing to either Thomas Edison's phone to the dead that he wanted to create, or Nikola Tesla's spirit phone that they were racing against each other to make it happen. Neither one of them accomplished it that we're aware of. But yeah, I'd say we hit the initial mark, but so much information has been brought up that it keeps it moving. There are so many other things we want to find out. And people always ask, did you ask this question? Did you ask this question? And they'll say, did you ask how the pyramids were built? Did you ask if Atlantis actually existed? And they're great questions. And at some point, am I going to ask those too? Yeah, I am. But because the construction of it, the making sure that all the principles are working correctly, the testing of it, the advancement of it is so time consuming, on top of demonstrating it, because people, like you said, are very skeptical. They want to see it for themselves. There's not enough time in my day to accomplish, asking 100 million questions that would need to be asked. And
it could be those questions that are not allowed to be answered as
and
well.
They very well
Maybe
can
we're
be.
not
And
supposed
we
to know.
when we hit those, because that wall goes up, communication just stops. I mean, the thing will just go silent.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we can't ask that.
Yeah.
But for cold cases, anything that's already happened, they never stutter on. If I say, okay, what happened here, I'll get an answer. So we're thinking this would be awesome for FBI, police department, without any more leads to follow up on. Let me throw out a couple of questions and see if you get anything that you're like, oh my gosh, we haven't tested it yet. It's in our very near future to give it a try.
I couldn't imagine law enforcement not being, I mean, they employ psychics, so why not?
Yeah, but
why not something like
how
this?
fantastic would that be to enter this into evidence in a court case? Like for the future. That would be amazing. Yes.
Audio evidence. So I don't know what they do with that. But
it's
not even a matter of having to enter it as evidence in a court. It's a matter of giving them the next step direction.
Yeah.
Right.
Or information to solve it. Okay, this is what happened. This person's guilty, or, the sorry about your son or daughter, they were camping, eaten by a bear, or, whatever the terrible news is. But, it's hard enough to grieve a loss. It's worse when you don't know what happened or where they are.
Right, the closure part of it.
So
for sure.
We're thinking maybe this could help.
That's fantastic.
That would be great.
So, Tony, I guess are you looking at some point, and if you don't, that's fine too, but are you looking at some point to make this something that people can utilize, kind of going down the future? And I know there's probably a lot of, first of all, how do you do a contained, delivery system? How do you make it to where it can't be, it's got to stay the way it's supposed to be. And I'm sure there's a lot of that in play, trying to figure out how do we deliver on that and make it, that same data set every single time. But is that something you guys are looking at doing in the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's been talked about. The problem is that this is a Frankenstein's monster of equipment, which is why we call it a method, not a device.
Right.
Right.
It uses everything from hardware to software to filtration to you name it. It's in there.
Right.
And then on top of it, it's a manual process to adjust everything to your location. And that can change from day to day to day, literally from morning to afternoon to evening, because we've had to readjust. We don't know how to teach somebody that.
Sure.
We certainly, I mean, right now 3.0 was designed by my wife and I. There's two of us. We're still doing the research. We're still doing advancements. We're still trying to work it out. If 1,000 people had this and they were contacting us every day, okay, I set it up like you said it, but I'm not getting anything. What do I do?
Right.
So we're not prepared to sell anything yet. It was never designed to be sold. It was designed for the research only, just like the 14 spirit boxes I built. I never sold a one. They were not built to make money. They were built for the research.
Right.
So we fight the battles. The only thing I can say is that the initial process, and when I'm saying initial, I'm talking the bare bones minimum, we got from a gentleman named Keith J. Clark. And he is offering to show people how to, and even help you do the basics, get it set up on your computer. It uses simple things like a mod called Sound Soap, some filtration, and you'll be able, once you get it dialed in, you'll be able to hear the voices speaking, not like what you've just heard, because this is 3 years of advancement, but it's the starting point. And for anybody who's really, truly interested to play with it, that's where I would start. Keith J. Clark, look him up on Facebook.
For sure. I mean, just the idea of knowing that we're this much further along in technology where we have such an advancement like this, where this could be such a missing part of the entire, I mean, what we all do. I mean, we spend countless amounts of
hours
and money and funding. Literally, I can look over not more than a few feet at our gear and know how many thousands of dollars are sitting over there.
Oh, trust me, I know.
We all know.
The research when we try to switch something, or I mean, it's not cheap.
No, it's not.
We don't have any sponsors or people supporting us financially to do this. We did this on our own.
Amazing.
I know there's 2 clips left of 3.0.
Sorry. Yeah.
So go ahead and play the one titled Responses.
Okay, here it goes.
Time what? Well, I can hear you when you whisper, you know that, right? Spirits, if you're not familiar with this device is called Staticom. If you heard me say Staticom. That's better.
Now, can you say Staticom for me, please?
Alright, Spirits, if you don't want to say Staticom, let's play another game. What am I holding in my hand? Glasses, thank you. Thank you very much. How about pineapple? Can you say pineapple? Oh, perfect, thank you. How come you can't say Staticom like that?
It's one word.
It's one word, Staticom. Have you not been able to talk to humans before? If you can hear me, spirits, say elephant.
Do you know Tony?
It's me. If we use this device to help cold cases, will you answer the questions? Yeah, sure. You bet. Thank you.
That will help.
That'll help a lot.
All right, so this really shows just the fact that we can communicate back and forth. There were multiple questions asked. We changed subjects. We were asking them to say certain words. They were responding with those words. I asked them what I was holding in my hand. You can't see me on the screen at the moment. I took my glasses off my top of my head, held in my hand. I said, what am I holding? Instant response, glasses. That was absolutely 100% correct. But you can hear the flow of the conversation. I mean, it's no different than if you had somebody on speakerphone on your phone and you were talking over the speakerphone. It's like that. Now, is it always that good? No, we've had some times, but they still respond. It's just not maybe that quickly or that many of them responding. And then the last one is called fourth round of testing. Yep. And this is the last one we've been able to do because we've been talking about it, and we've been so tomorrow night we don't have anything planned. We are doing another test session to run it. But
That's
here,
awesome.
Go ahead and play the fourth round, and we'll talk about that.
All right, here we go.
Rathman, I heard you say Rathman. Yes. What did you want to say to Roger? It's Tony. Spirits, can you hear me? Yes, okay. That was a loud voice that just answered. What's your name? That's a strange name. How many spirits are here with us right now? A lot? A lot, yeah, that's what I thought you said. Because there's so many of you, is that why all the background chatter? They're talking? Do you have any messages for us? Rathman, I heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, you can't, like I said, when we got fascinated with audio responses from something that is not in front of you, you can't see it, you don't know it's there. And that's the other thing people would ask us, scientists would ask us, okay, well, after you got done communicating, was there any residual energy in the room? And my answer was no, because they're not bound to time and space. They don't have to come into my house to respond. They can respond from anywhere. If I went and sat at the next door neighbor at his kitchen table for 2 hours and then left, could you hit the chair and find residual heat? Yeah, you could.
Yeah.
But if I'm talking to him over my cell phone, like Staticom uses, I don't have to be there. I'm not leaving any energy in his house. It's the same thing.
Wow, good point.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it.
No, that makes perfect. Yeah, you're right. If you're on a cell phone,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great analogy.
Talk to anyone in the world.
Right, but I'm not going to leave any skin cells or heat in their apartment because I was never there.
You know that
Blown
gif
away.
that the guy goes, it's just,
I know.
amazing.
I know.
well, Tony, I got to admit, I know our audience is going to want to know a lot about it. And I know there's going to be a lot of questions behind it, which is fantastic.
Of course. We welcome those.
Yeah. Where can they go to kind of get involved, or at least kind of see what you're doing, what you guys are up to?
Absolutely. The first place is a website called entityvoices.com. Entity Voices is our paranormal group, but there's a whole Staticom section. You can watch other podcasts. You can look at clips. You can go through just a variety of stuff. There's a blog. You can look at the articles talked about, written about, or that I wrote that are on there about progress, where we're going. If you go to YouTube, you will find them. If you just search Staticom, the page will come up. If you go to Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations, there's Staticom stuff on there. If you go to Facebook, either under Tony Rathman or my wife, Cherie Rathman, both of us have posts, things, places we're going to be, where we're demonstrating. That's the best. Those are probably the best social media places to find out what's going on, where we're going to be at, what we've captured, and information about the process itself.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. There is one thing I wanted to mention. We watched, I think it was on YouTube, wasn't it? The clip where you're speaking to someone that was speaking a different language.
Oh, yeah.
And they said Turkish.
Right.
And you said, well, I don't speak Turkish. Can you speak to me in English? Yes. Like, it's not,
just switch.
there's no problem just switching languages.
Yes.
I thought that was very interesting.
So we've gotten lots of different languages. Luckily, my wife speaks 3. She's trilingual. She can speak Tagalog, Japanese, and English. So,
Okay.
like when we were over in the Philippines, we would get EVPs. We got them in Tagalog, Japanese, English, and Latin. Latin's the only one neither one of us
Wow.
could speak, but when we had somebody who did speak it translate, they told us exactly what was being said. It did answer the question we asked. But the best example of that was we were doing a public demonstration, and we stepped back as the presenters and let the audience come up one by one and ask their question. And this gentleman came up, and we didn't think anything of it, and he asked his question in his Native American language. Wow. And I thought, cool, this will be great to see what happens. So we just sat back and waited, and I didn't hear an answer because I didn't even know what he asked. But I saw his jaw drop and his eyes get wide, and I said, "Did you get your answer?" He said, "Not only did I get it, but I got it in my Native American language."
That's amazing.
Wow. That's so
again, back to
awesome.
the whole universal consciousness of shared knowledge.
Yeah.
Whatever language you're going to speak, they're going to answer, or whatever language they know you're going to understand, they're going to answer, because they're in collective consciousness. They have access to everything.
That's amazing.
It's like the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, it really is.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, Tony, I don't have enough words to thank you for coming on and kind of sharing this with us.
I
do have
appreciate
one
it.
thing. Oh yeah, I do have one thing to say though.
Sure.
I'm from Tucson.
Really?
So yeah, I'm originally from Tucson. So thank you for spending time with the Wildcat. Hopefully that's okay.
That's fine. No, they're a great team. I lived in Tucson for about 3 years. I've been all over the country though, but I liked it down there. It was great, and not quite as hot as Phoenix
No.
is.
Just
but,
Phoenix, no.
yeah.
Nothing's quite as hot as Phoenix.
There's nothing like Phoenix. But
Real quick story. We went to Mills Mall, which I don't even know if it's still open or what's
there.
going on over there. But she was wearing flip flops. We're walking from our vehicle. This is summertime. We're walking from our vehicle, and it's not that far away, Tony, where we parked. And her shoes, her flip flops started melting on the way to it. Mm-hmm. It's just wild. Arizona
I've
life.
had that happen. I mean, when it's 117 out and the pavement's probably 130,
Yeah.
chances
Easily.
are a rubber-soled shoe or flip-flop probably going to change form.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Especially the cheap Old Navy
Oh,
flip flops,
yeah.
which is
Well-
what I was wearing at the time.
I mean, it is what it is. But again, Tony, thank you so much.
Yeah,
we look
thank you.
forward and hopefully have you back on. I'd like to kind of keep
Anytime.
keep everything up to speed because
Keep
I'm
us
very
up to
interested
date.
in
Yeah.
it.
I'm blown
What
away.
we're working on right now, and like I said, there's so many things we're trying to accomplish. We just ripped the thing completely apart to make it more portable because we're being asked to bring it all over the place.
Sure.
The other thing we're being asked is, can you do this live? Can we run it live? The problem is live has one camera, one mic.
Yes.
Right.
And to have speakers blaring in my ears where you guys are trying to talk to me isn't going to work. So we're trying to figure out a way to integrate two computers together so that we can share audio and video from one onto another. It's like a share screen, but from an entirely separate computer. I'm working on that now. I had some success the other night. Hopefully it'll continue to be successful, but I don't know yet. But that's definitely something that people are like, can we run it for half an hour and let people ask us questions? Can it be done? I'm sure it can. We've done it in the past. 3.0 is a little more complicated, but we're working on it. But I just wanted to say thank you for having me on, letting me discuss
Absolutely.
this. And I greatly appreciate, we appreciate every opportunity to be able to share the information on where ITC is heading, because this is real two-way communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
great.
Thank you so much. And look forward to talking to you soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Tony, for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
And officially, my mind is completely melted. Yeah, good, bad, or indifferent. If you guys, depending on how you feel about ITC, look, we understand the skepticism behind it. In fact, I've got my own skepticism behind it. But this is a closed system, guys, and I guess to kind of,
I would love to see it in action.
oh, for sure. Like if we weren't going to be in potentially the Ireland, we could probably go to Phenomicon, but it's during that
it's
time.
Ireland.
Yeah.
I know. I don't know what to think,
It's
because honestly, like our honeytone made it the most clear that I've ever heard it,
Sure.
at least in certain investigations. And this is even clearer than that.
Yeah.
And that kind of blows my mind a little bit. And if you go and watch, I mean, he's got multiple videos, and kind of what we were talking to him about there at the end, the one with the guy that was speaking Turkish. When he comes across then in English, you can hear an accent in his voice.
Yes, you can.
Which you can hear when you get EVPs
Yeah.
through the honeytone and through even like a recorder. It's so interesting that they keep the accent. But this is like extremely clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've never really been able to wrap my head around, well, I've been able to wrap my head around it. I just have never really completely bought in to the sweeping back and forth at the radio stations, because if you've never used one of these devices, and if you've ever watched any of these ghost I don't want to say the word because I hate that, but any
Ghost hunting
yes,
shows.
thank you. I was
Yes.
going to say it, but anyway. They have a device that does it and it picks up different things. So does it work? I agree with Tony. It works. However, whenever you hear something, it's not really in the tone or in the voice of
Well, it can leave it open to
right.
extreme skepticism, because
For sure.
you're right. Because how do you determine as an investigator what could be just leaked radio voices, or if they're actually, now, if you ask a direct question and
Right.
you get a direct answer, we as investigators know the difference.
Absolutely.
But for someone just watching a TV show or someone that's already very skeptical, they're gonna be like, "Oh, that's just coincidence."
Right.
Right? And it can be just coincidence.
Sure.
But this takes all of that away, and that's what I find a little bit like just phenomenal, and how they
Yeah.
figured out how to do that.
Yeah. But I also think with SB7s and stuff like that, it takes training and it takes somebody who knows what they're doing.
Agreed.
Like Sam, for example.
Yes.
And you watch, and it's nothing for us to show, we're not allowed to, or whether we are or not, but there was a conversation between her and somebody else at Belvoir Winery, and she's a very talented person in what she does. I don't think I could do it.
No, I'm
And-
terrible at it.
Right. And it takes a trained ear to hear it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you almost want something that kind of cuts it out. The problem with the honeytone and the problem with some of these things, that while it cuts some of that delay and that sound out, you lose that lower end
Yeah.
and you lose some of the
May
higher
lose
end.
some- yeah.
Right. So you never know for sure. You could be leaving a lot on the table that you don't know about. Whereas something like this, that doesn't necessarily happen. So,
My favorite clip of what we watched beforehand, and then once again here on the show, is the clip where it's like they realize that he's actually speaking to them. Like they're just talking, and they're like, "Oh, he can hear." And what was it? It was like, I think it was Roxy.
yeah.
He's talking to us.
Yeah.
Like surprise. And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
it's pretty
that's
wild.
really cool."
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's super compelling. All the stuff that you guys go to the
Please, please
check
go
it
if
out.
you're even this much interested. And if you're on the video, you can see me, but the audio, it's like an inch. That much interested.
It's not much there. So.
Go check it out because it will blow your mind. There are some crazy like videos that he's got up.
Yeah. Listen, guys, tell us what you think. Comment, do all the things. If you're listening on the podcast, please rate us. Let us know if we're doing a good job. Other than that, guys.
And contact us.
Yeah,
You
contact
want to be on the
us.
show,
Yeah.
info@gxparanormal.com. We'd love to have you on.
Absolutely.
All
Other
right.
than that, guys, we'll see you next week.